In Cape Town, a third humpback whale has been found dead at sea. The latest incident follows two similar cases, raising questions about what may be causing these deaths. Authorities continue to investigate as these majestic creatures complete their annual migration along the Cape Coast. Take a look at this report.
Christian Diaz-Suarez is led into court accused of inhumane, consistent and cruel abuse over almost a decade. Inside this Kilburn home, the 38-year-old is alleged to have forced a group of young Venezuelans to serve him.
I've never even really, in my memory, have not even seen anyone leave that house.
It's alleged the Colombian man brought them over in 2015, then took away their passports. He's accused of locking the group in cupboards, forcing them to pledge his services, tracking their movements and scheduling daily compulsory chores. Neighbours today feeling helpless, devastated they didn't even know there were people living at the house.
You'd think you'd hear something or anything weird or something, but just nothing.
Until yesterday, when federal police swooped on the home, taking Suarez into custody. They raided the house, seizing evidence. Police will allege he isolated his victims, monitoring and controlling all communication and messages with their family and friends. The court hearing today was brief. He didn't apply for bail.
Assess the evidence and obtain some instructions from there.
Suarez will return to court next month. Hannah Ford, 7 News.
At this market in West Yorkshire, there's plenty of fresh food on offer. But a new report suggests people are increasingly turning to fast food, which is costing the UK when it comes to health and finances.
We are a society in distress, and we're living with an increasing burden of chronic disease. That chronic disease has a devastating impact on our health, and it's undermining our national finances. And when you look at it from the point of view of, what to do about it, the answer is pretty clear. It's all lies in prevention.
The report found food-related chronic disease is costing the UK £268 billion per year. That number far exceeds the £181 billion spent on the NHS this year. Ultra-processed food, which researchers say can cause chronic illnesses, currently makes up more than half of the British diet.
The government has diet guidelines it suggests people follow for a healthy lifestyle. It says people should cut down on processed foods and snacks and to eat more fruit, fibre and vegetables. But this report says if people follow those guidelines, that it could cost households an extra £38 every week.
Food is something we can't do without, is it? So, if we can make things healthier and more accessible to people, we'd have more money in the NHS.
Because we have a little one, we're trying to give him good food, but then it's expensive, isn't it?
David Gibbons' family have run this fruit and veg stall for over 40 years, and he says money is tighter than ever.
Good fruit and veg, it can be expensive. And the processed stuff is too readily available, isn't it? I was talking to a lady this morning who says it's cheaper for her to go buy a little microwave meal out of one of the supermarkets than it is to make, a nice meal.
The government's pledged to tackle diet-related illness. It's banning junk food TV adverts before 9 p.m. and energy drink sales to under 16s. There are also calls for manufacturers to offer healthier options and a tighter regulation of the food industry. Because as it stands, a healthy diet is costing people time and money they simply don't have. Charlotte Leeming, Sky News, Otley in West Yorkshire.
Australia is in the grips of extreme weather conditions this morning. Southeast Queensland had a day of deluge with severe storms and flash flooding, forcing multiple flood rescues.
In Victoria, bushfires have prompted the evacuation of several towns in the state's west. For more, we bring in our team of reporters, and first to 7 News reporter Nats Levy, who joins us from Wellington Point. Nats, it's been a really wild couple of days for Queenslanders and more to come.
Good morning, Matt and Mon. It has been a wild couple of days indeed, and the hope very much today is that we're on clean-up mode with the forecast to be cloudy with only that odd shower. Now, yesterday it was an unexpected downpour that took the city and its surrounding suburbs by surprise. We know that in some suburbs they were hitting over 100 millimetres on the rain gauge in water volume, but it wasn't just the volume of water that fell from the skies, it was the rate at which it fell. Some areas received 100 millimetres within a 3-hour period, and it fell on land and had nowhere to go. So we saw streets turned into creeks, we saw fields turned into ponds, we saw many people taken unawares and trapped in their vehicles in these streets. There were 50 SES call-outs to people to be rescued, to property damage, and to help those that needed that help the most. So today, very much, the water is subsiding. Those dams are still overflowing, and if you can see behind me, it's subsiding quite quickly, and the hope is today that there will be no extra rain for that already very sodden soil, and it will just be clean up for here in Brisbane.
Oh, let's hope so. Links to Christy Mayer, who's in Melbourne. Now, Christy, there are warnings this morning for some residents to leave urgently. What areas are in the firing line this morning?
Good morning, guys. The main bushfire causing concern here in Victoria at the moment is at Chapel Vale, which is in the state's west. Residents who live in that area are being urged to leave now, and that warning also applies to residents in the surrounding regions of Crows, Jellybrand Lower, Joanna Heights, Lavers Hill, Stalker, Wanderip, Wattle Hill and Yulong. The wind is expected to change direction there very soon, pushing that bushfire in an easterly direction, and there is a risk of spot fires along the Great Ocean Road, so people who live along that stretch or who are driving along that stretch today are being urged to take extreme caution. There's another warning for Kadnook residents who have evacuated from a bushfire there overnight. The advice for them this morning is it is still not safe to return, and there is a third bushfire in the state's far east on the border of Victoria and New South Wales at Malakuta, which is still not under control. There are also multiple weather warnings, not only for Victoria today, but also for parts of New South Wales and northern Tasmania. Heavy rain of up to 80 millimetres is expected in parts of Gippsland in Victoria, around the Bright and the Mansfield regions, as well as the Central Tablelands and Riverina in New South Wales. Both of those areas are at risk of flash flooding, thunderstorms and damaging winds, and parts of northern Tasmania are also expected to have heavy rains and thunderstorms as well. So residents in all of those areas are being urged to stay across the warnings and stay across the alerts to stay safe today, guys.
Wow, there's some wild weather right around the country, isn't there?
Super Typhoon Man-yi has uprooted trees, brought down power lines and ripped off iron roofing as it swept across the storm-weary Philippines. Man-yi, picking maximum sustained winds of 185 kilometers per hour, made landfall on lightly populated island. More than 650,000 people fled their homes ahead of the storm, as the National Weather Service warned of a potentially catastrophic and life-threatening impact from the storm.
Mamaya po kasi na mga 12 a.m. na maaga, high tide po sa may Saamonin 2.0, plus mo pa po ang uran, medyo mahataas pa siya kaysa sa 2.0, plus ang typhoon po niya may signal number 5, super typhoon, kaya po kami nag-i-evacuate, kaya ang balay namon gilid po sin dagat.
Now, according to the Catadunas Provincial Disaster Operations Chief, there has been no reports of casualties as people followed the evacuation orders properly. The chief added that cleanup efforts on the island is underway. Furthermore, Man-yi is expected to slightly weaken to a typhoon before hitting Luzon today. Now, Luzon is the country's most populous island and economic engine. On its current trajectory, Man-yi will cross north of Manila and sweep over the South China Sea on Monday. Man-yi is the sixth storm in the past month to batter the archipelago nation. At least 163 people died in the previous storms that also left thousands homeless and wiped out crops and livestock. Climate change is increasing the intensity of storms, leading to heavier rains, flash floods, and stronger gusts. About 20 big storms and typhoons hit the Southeast Asian nation or its surrounding waters each year, killing scores of people. But it is rare for multiple such weather events to take place in a small window. Now, satellite images starting from November 3rd show Typhoon Yinching, Typhoon Toraji, and Typhoon Usagi cutting through the country with Typhoon Man-yi en route. Now, earlier in October, Tropical Storm Trami and Typhoon Kongray brought heavy flooding, triggered landslides, and killed about 162 people.
California is confirming the first domestic case of the more severe strain of Mpox. According to the CDC, it was identified in a person who recently traveled from Eastern Africa. They were treated shortly after returning to the U.S. and released. State health officials say their symptoms are improving. Health officials are now working to identify anyone who may have been in contact and exposed. The agency stresses the risk to the public remains low.
The flu outbreak is spreading in the U.S. as well right now, and now Canada detected its first human case of the new strain. A teenager in British Columbia is in the hospital and receiving treatment. Doctors believe the teen caught the virus from a bird or some other animal, meaning this strain could be mutating.
Flu has a way that it can change and mix and match parts with other flu strains that are around. And so some of those different versions have resulted in different health outcomes for various species.
The CDC identified 46 cases of bird flu in humans since it began tracking this new strain. Agency warning the virus is spreading more quickly than previously thought among farm workers here in the U.S., especially those working with cattle. Federal health advisors say there's no risk, though, to the American food supply.
Welcome back. You're watching Beyond World is One. Thanks for staying with us. I'm Jyotsna Kumar. Let's start with the headlines. India successfully conducts flight trial of the country's first long-range hypersonic missile off the coast of Odisha.
Three, two, one, now.
Three people arrested after flares land at Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's residence in Caesarea, says Israeli police. Lahav 433 Major Crimes Unit and Shin Bet investigating the incident. Israeli military orders residents to leave three parts of Beirut's southern suburbs ahead of planned strikes on multiple buildings. Philippines hit by a sixth major storm in less than a month. Super Typhoon Manyi forced hundreds of thousands of people to flee to emergency shelters. Venezuela begins releasing hundreds of people who were detained in protests against the disputed re-election of President Nicolas Maduro in July, says the prosecutor's office. Chinese President Xi Jinping warns U.S. not to cross red line in support for Taiwan, tells President Biden Beijing ready to work with incoming administration of Donald Trump.
Separatist militants attacked a paramilitary border post in Pakistan's southwestern Balochistan province, which has been restive since several months, killing 7 soldiers and injuring 15 others. The Pakistan Army confirmed the attack, saying that terrorists attempted to attack a post in Shah-e-Mardan area of Kalat district. Now, the army said that 6 terrorists were killed by security forces. The assault, claimed by the Balochistan Liberation Army, involved 40 to 50 armed attackers. The wounded have been airlifted to Quetta for treatment. And this attack comes just a week after the BLA killed 26 people, including 14 soldiers, in an attack at a Quetta railway station. The group that frequently targets security forces and foreign invested energy projects accuses outsiders of exploiting the resource-rich region. The BLA's increasingly bold attacks have highlighted challenges facing security forces in one of Pakistan's most volatile regions, sparking concerns about the safety of key infrastructure and civilians. Pakistan's Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif has condemned the incident, vowing immediate action against the perpetrators.
Israeli Defense Forces say their warplanes have hit more than 120 terrorist targets across Lebanon in the past 24 hours. The IDF says the strikes include Hezbollah terrorist infrastructure sites and Hezbollah Special Operation Forces command centers. It comes as a top Iranian official is vowing his support for Lebanon after talks with Lebanese leaders about the conflict between Israel and Hezbollah. Foreign correspondent Britt Clennett joins me from Tel Aviv, Israel, with more on that. Britt, Beirut has been hit by Israeli strikes for the fourth day in a row. Now civilians are being told to evacuate new locations the IDF says it will target. So what's the latest on the fighting there in Lebanon?
Yeah, Diane, over a dozen killed across Lebanon in Israeli strikes. That's according to the health ministry there. And yes, we've seen the Lebanese capital targeted once again, Diane. Huge plumes of black smoke rising into the air after Israel says it continues to hit Hezbollah infrastructure. Now, it's worth remembering that there are reports of potential ceasefire deals on the table. Hezbollah continuing to fire into Israel's territory. One of the aims of this ground operation, of course, is to allow Israelis who are displaced from their homes in the north by that rocket fire to be able to return home. But despite the damage to Hezbollah infrastructure and those top assassinations, they do continue to fire into Israeli territory, announcing 12 attacks today, Diane.
So, Britt, what more are you learning about these talks between this top Iranian official and Lebanese leaders?
Yeah, so the main relationship here is between Iran and its proxy Hezbollah. That's been under a lot of scrutiny. It's something we've talked a lot about. The Lebanese government really aren't expected to have much of a role in any ceasefire agreement going forward. Hezbollah, however, has a massive role in Lebanese society. You know, it's backed by Iran. It's designated as a terror group by the US, but it is not just a military force, but a political and social organisation too. So it's really difficult, Diane, to see a path forward without their involvement being quite key to the process. And another one of those aims of the Israeli operation has been to kind of decouple the Gaza front of this war from the Gaza front. And so far we've seen no indication that Hezbollah is actually willing to stop firing into Israeli territory without a wider regional ceasefire. So it does seem like Iran is continuing to back its interests in Lebanon, Diane.
All right, foreign correspondent Britt Clennett in Tel Aviv, Israel.
And we have some news coming at this point in time from Manipur, where large-scale mob violence has been reported in parts of the Valley districts after 6 people were killed in Jiribam. Residences of local MLAs attacked by angry protesters, decrying the recent abduction and brutal killings of 6 individuals in Jiribam, which has sent shockwaves throughout the state. This has led to tensions in Manipur. Mob from different corners of the Valley district stormed the residences of local MLAs, destroying properties here. Mob stormed the MLA Sapam Nishikanta's house, located at the Keshampath near Sangai Express local newspaper office. Mob have also stormed into the house of an MLA here in Imphal, burning the furniture of the house and windows of the house. I'm going to go straight across to Ashutosh Mishra for more details. Tensions once again, Ashutosh, erupt in the valley in Manipur. Just take us to the details of what has happened and what are the kind of steps that are now being taken to douse the fire there, quite literally.
So Sneha, you gave the background how it all started. So this is all looks like a reaction to what has happened in Jiribam. Now a dead body of a woman and 2 children have been found. They have been sent to Silchar. In fact, one woman on 7th of November was burned, and the autopsy report says that she was tortured. Now, since 6 people are missing, 3 women, 3 children, there is aggression now we see in the valley where the people are demanding their safe rescual. And since the government has been failed so far to find the whereabouts, looks like a reaction that breaks out in the valley. But this all started this morning at 11:45 when there was massive firing. As many as 40 rounds were fired from the hilly sides at the Laima area in the West Imphal district near the Kangpokpi. Subsequently, this led to all the protests by the people in the valley at multiple such places. And there are many MLAs who came under this attack. Is MLA RM RM Imo, who's the son-in-law of the Chief Minister, Biren Singh. His house also came under attack. Several other MLAs' houses came under attack. Though the protesters maintained they only were limited to the outside of these houses, certain limited number of these properties were attacked, but there is a massive protest breakdown. And as we speak, there is a curfew yet again has been imposed in East Imphal and West Imphal. And if you remember, just a couple of months ago when the curfew relaxation was given, the curfew was withdrawn. Today, looking at the situation as it goes tense further, not in Jiribam, but also now in the valley, the curfew relaxation has been withdrawn. That simply means yet again in the valley, now the curfew has been imposed in East Imphal and West Imphal. That simply means entire valley comes under curfew. So, and that clearly, when you impose curfew, that simply means the kind of situation is escalating, is the anger of the people, the stress of the people, that how even more than a year now, it's going to be nearly around 1.5 years, the situation still not under control.
Extremely worrisome. Very disturbing pictures there coming in from Imphal West and Manipur that we've put out for our viewers, where tensions continue and a curfew has been imposed as well. Ashutosh, I'm going to leave it at that for the moment.
Welcome back to Live Now from Fox. I'm Jeanne Francine, 8:23 here on the East Coast. And briefly, I want to get to some updates as it relates to the conflict with Russia and Ukraine. Take a look at your screen. We're learning this morning the battle between Ukraine and Russia is evolving, with more fighting now than ever handled by unmanned aerial drones. Fox News correspondent Stephanie Bennett takes a look.
This represents a huge advancement for Ukraine, and it's relatively inexpensive as well. The Wall Street Journal reports that these robot attack drones are essentially a mini computer equipped with autopilot software. Kyiv is set to receive tens of thousands of them by next year. With a smaller population, Ukraine is reliant on maintaining a technological edge. It's also cheaper than missiles and artillery shells, saving money and manpower. But Russia's drone tactics continue to evolve as well. Drone attacks are a daily occurrence between the two countries. The Associated Press has revealed that a factory in Russia has been manufacturing thermobaric drones alongside decoys. They can create high pressure and high heat explosions that suck out all the oxygen in its path. A source tells the AP that Moscow first came up with Operation False Target in late 2022, which proposed firing a barrage of armed drones alongside decoys that cannot be identified from those carrying real bombs. Well, shortly after his victory, President-elect Donald Trump held a phone call with the Ukrainian president. Volodymyr Zelensky says it was a constructive exchange. During a recent interview with a Ukrainian media outlet, Zelensky says he is certain the war with Russia will end sooner with Trump as president. President-elect Trump has consistently said his priority is to end the war, but also stop what he says is a drain on U.S. resources in the form of military aid to Ukraine. For now, President Zelensky has repeatedly said that they must do everything in their power to try and end this war no later than next year. In London, Stephanie Bennett, Fox News.
Stephanie, thank you so much for that update. And speaking of the conflict with Russia, right now in real time in Berlin, Germany, we see that Russian opposition figures, including Alexei Navalny's widow, they're calling for a major anti-war demonstration this Sunday morning. We're told those in attendance are demanding the resignation of Russian President Vladimir Putin. And you can see several of the signs that are up saying stop the war. I can tell you all in the front of this rally march, we see Alexei Navalny's widow with several others who are holding a sign saying no Putin, no war.
Russia unleashed the largest wave of airstrikes on Ukraine in almost 3 months in the early hours of Sunday morning. Ukrainian officials said 120 missiles and 90 drones were deployed in a sweeping overnight attack that targeted critical infrastructure. Several people have already been reported dead around the country, from Lviv in the west to Dnipropetrovsk in the southeast. This footage shows missiles being shot down over the capital, Kyiv. Only hours later, emergency services could be seen carefully extracting the remnants of a missile that bypassed air defences from the top of a residential building. The attack has caused severe damage to Ukraine's power system, the country's largest private energy provider said, and triggered emergency power cuts in numerous regions. Ukrainians have for weeks been bracing for such an attack, expected to cause long blackouts and ramp up psychological pressure just as winter sets in. What's more is that the latest wave comes as the war approaches this week's 1,000th day since Russia's full-scale invasion. The latest onslaught piles more pressure on Ukraine as Moscow's troops notch up their fastest battlefield gains in the east since 2022. The Russian effort to seize the entire industrial Donbass region comes despite troops taking heavy losses, according to Kiev and the West. Ukraine's Foreign Minister Andriy Sybiha said the strikes appeared to be Moscow's true response to leaders interacting with President Vladimir Putin. It was an apparent swipe at German Chancellor Olaf Scholz, who called the Russian leader on Friday for the first time since late 2022. Although Scholz urged Putin to pull his troops out of Ukraine, where they occupy a fifth of the country. The strikes also come just 10 days after Donald Trump won the US presidential election and pledged to end the war. Although Trump has not revealed how he would end the conflict, it has raised the prospect of a looming push to hold negotiations.